What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Met Central podcast. And today we are doing a live on the go edition. So the camera, the volume, the audio quality, everything's going to be a little bit off today as we are currently in a undisclosed location for a wedding. But yeah, we got a lot to get into as the Mets took on the Diamondbacks this past series. Thankfully, ended up winning that series, even though things did not look good, and so much so that there was even a rant during the middle of the series from me. But we got a lot to get into, and then of course preview the upcoming series against the Chicago Cubs, which is not going to be any easier. Before we jump in everything though, please be sure to leave a like on your way in, or if you're watching on replay, subscribe if you guys are new to the channel, especially for Met fans, and turn on your post notifications so you know when we upload or go live. We will get to your comments in the chat as much as possible. We, of course, just want to keep on the subject here of the conversation at hand, but yeah, hectic series to say the least.
No, for sure. For sure. I mean, there was a lot of ups, there was a lot of downs, but I think the most important thing for the Mets, and I know we're going to talk about the lack of overall concerns, especially with the offense, because right now that is the number one concern, especially heading into the Chicago Cubs series. But the good thing for the Mets, because after going 7-0, after sweeping the Cardinals and Phillies both back at home, they started going a little bit of a rush stretch. Obviously splitting that series with the Nationals, then losing 2 out of 3 to the Cardinals as well. So the Mets really needed to get back in the win column and overall the winning series column. So it was a good thing that they went out there. Wasn't pretty, like I said, but they went out there. They went into Arizona against a very good Diamondbacks team. And of course, if you guys remember, a couple weeks ago, the Diamondbacks took 2 out of 3 at Citi Field from the Mets. So it was good to go back into Arizona, get a little bit of revenge, and ultimately, the season series has now been split at 3 apiece. There won't be another game played between the Mets and the Diamondbacks. So
Unless in
if
October,
unless,
potentially.
yeah, but regular season I'm talking about. So
Yeah.
unless, like, obviously if there's a tiebreaker, then obviously it won't be by games. It's obviously going to go to something else. So, but we'll see. Hopefully, the Mets won't have to be in a situation like last year where it came down to a tiebreaker that basically decided if they made the playoffs or not.
Yeah. And like you said, just and like I said at the top, just very chaotic here, which we'll break down now how the series unfolded, just because again, there's a lot to unpack here. So in game one, it was Griffin Canning versus Ryan Nelson, as Corbin Burns was scheduled to start this game for the Diamondbacks, but he got scratched from it due to a injury. And he's going to start on the weekend, but anyone watching this does not really give a shit. But in the top of the first inning, the Mets would fail to get anything going. Pete Alonso ended up hitting into a double play early. Corbin Carroll in the bottom of the first would hit a home run to make it a 1-0 game, as Griffin Canning would give him a fastball on the inside part of the plate that he was able to turn on. Fast forward a little bit in the third inning, the New York Mets would get a triple from Tyrone Taylor, but then unfortunately, Lindor would end up flying out, and it's not deep enough for a sacrifice fly to be done there, as Tyrone Taylor gets gunned down at the plate. In the top of the fourth inning, Juan Soto would get a leadoff walk, and then Pete Alonso would leave no doubt with this home run as he makes it a 2-1 ball game. They would get more traffic on the bases from Nimmo Vientos, but they would fail to score any further. In the bottom of the fourth inning, there was a single from Josh Naylor, but Griffin Canning would work around it. And as we fast forward to the bottom of the fifth, a little more trouble after the 2 outs. Perdomo and Carroll would get back-to-back singles, but Griffin Canning again working out of trouble. And we would see Brazoban come in to make easy work in the bottom of the sixth. The seventh inning, the Mets would open the floodgates a bit as Alvarez gets a single, Tyrone Taylor gets a double, and then Francisco Lindor would make it a 5-1 game with a home run. Juan Soto hits a deep double. Pete Alonso gets a single, but unfortunately Marte, which we'll get into him a lot during this episode, hits into a double play. And unfortunately, Deadnell Nunez in his return, fortunate that he returned, unfortunate that in his return he had to hurt our hearts with 3 consecutive walks. Reed Garrett would come in, and he's pitching on back-to-back days at that point. He would allow a little too much damage compared to what we're accustomed to seeing from Reed Garrett. Eugenio Suarez almost left the yard here, but by the end of that, it ended up being 5-4. But thankfully, Edwin Diaz did not give us a heart attack as the Mets hold on to win game number one of that series. In game number two, this is where the rant came in because it was David Peterson, results man, versus Zach Gallen. And it was definitely an interesting outing for Peterson, which we'll break down, but the top of the third inning is really where you can look at it and say the Mets definitely lost the game here. Jeff McNeil lines out, and then Alvarez gets a single. Taylor hits into a force out, but with 2 outs, the Mets rally together 3 consecutive walks from the top three of their order. And then who else but Starling Marte to not even lift the bat off of his shoulders and go down on 3 pitches in that part of the inning there to end it. The bottom of the fourth inning is where we would see trouble from David Peterson, as he faced a lot of it during this game, which, again, more on that later. Randall Grichuk, though, would get a double to lead off that inning. Eugenio Suarez would walk, and then a pass ball would move the runners over. Josh Naylor hits into a force out. Gurriel with a double. And by the end of this, Perdomo grounded out, which made it 2-1, by the way. By the end of it, though, it was a 2-1 ball game. Fast forward to the sixth inning, Naylor would get a walk, and then Gurriel would end up hitting a home run to end up making it a 4-1 game. Not a good part of the zone to leave a fastball if you're David Peterson. Budo would come in and not make things any easier, as he ends up allowing a sacrifice fly to Naylor. And the Mets really had nothing to show for. They teased a bit in the ninth inning, as they did have a walk from Juan Soto, a single from Marte, but really nothing going in that game for them to win it, which, again, more on that. And then in the final game, it was Kodai Senga going against Merrill Kelly. And the Mets would definitely make us have a little bit of a heart attack in this one a little early on, just because they were not getting the hits. But then as we fast forward throughout the game, again, just leaving runners on base nonstop. But Juan Soto in the sixth inning would go yard to make it a 1-0 ball game. And then in the seventh inning, the Mets would tack on some runs as Torrens gets a double, Acuna with a single to make it 2-0. McNeil would get a triple that made it 3-0. And then there was a little bit of trouble for Max Kranick in the seventh inning, but he ends up working out of it, which we'll talk about that as well. Juan Soto, though, would get his second home run of the game, which made it 4-0. Corbin Carroll with a home run in the bottom of the eighth to respond as Max Kranick remained in the game. Brazaban would come in and get the last 2 outs. The Mets would thankfully open the floodgates in the ninth as Azokar ends up walking, steals a bag, Taylor walks, Lindor with a double, which made it 6-1. Juan Soto sacrifice fly 7-1, and then Ryan Stanek comes in, and the Mets hold on to win the game. So definitely a lot of ups and downs throughout the series. Concerns with the offense is still here. Just, again, lack of producing with runners in scoring position.
Yeah, that certainly is one of the biggest issues right now, and we've seen it for the previous series, and again, this series it was prevalent again where the offense, apart from the top guys, because I mean Lindor obviously in the first game hits the big 2-run shot or the big 3-run shot. Pete obviously hits the big 2-run shot earlier in the game to put the Mets up 2-1, but pretty much from the rest of the lineup, you got nothing. I mean, I know Soto that game. I'm pretty sure he got on 3 times. I think it's due to 2 walks and a single. So overall, he had a pretty good game. But it's just again, it's after those top 3 guys, because even we've been saying on the last couple podcasts that the top 3 guys in Lindor, Pete, and Soto, they are going to get on base at a consistent clip. I mean, and even with the days that like Pete, for example, like yesterday in the finale, went 0 for 5. Now, I didn't think it was the worst game, but still, it was an 0 for. He didn't get on base. But that's when you need to rely on your bottom guys in the order to pick you guys up. Guys like Nimmo, Vientos, Acuna as well. And I mean, we just haven't seen that production. I mean, Nimmo did look a little bit better this series. I'll give him that. There was that injury scare in the second game, which we'll bring up. But again, Vientos, still an empty bases merchant, is putting together good at bats, making hard contact when no one's on base. But then, of course, like we've seen in the last couple of series, where when Vientos comes up in a spot where there's guys on base, and once the pitchers they basically know the formula of Vientos, it's throw any type of slider low and away, and he's going to chase, and he's going to swing, and he's going to miss at it. I think there was one AB during the series with guys on base where he actually put together a good at bat, and he actually wasn't chasing, but still couldn't drive in the run. So, but I think it's just more what we've been talking about, where it's like sure, like the top guys will come through, they will, but you can't over rely on those top guys. Eventually, the depth pieces in this lineup have to start coming through.
Yeah, and like that was the biggest problem. And when I ranted after game number 2, it's like, why are we forcing Jeff McNeil into this lineup every single night when he's not producing? Like, I'm sorry, and I know he had the triple in the next game, but why is he in the lineup when Luis Angel Acuna has looked the way he has? Why are you letting that kid rot on the bench? And then right now, I mean, I said it in the post game, and I'll get your thoughts on it now. Don't you think it would be better to have Hayden Sendra on the roster as a third catcher than Brett Beatty? Because at least right now, if you had a third catcher, one of Alvarez or Torrens could DH given days, and then you have both of their bats in the lineup. Because right now, those two are the most consistent parts of the bottom of the lineup out of anyone.
No, that makes the most sense, and that's something we actually brought up before McNeil and Alvarez actually came back, and we talked about instead of bringing up like someone like Azakarv or something as an example, just carry the three catchers. So there could be days where you DH either Alvarez or Torrens, and then you either have one of them behind the plate, and that's good because I mean. Listen, no offense to Brett Beatty, but we know Brett Beatty isn't a great player. And again, nothing to him. He's not good. He's not a major league caliber player. But at least with Alvarez and Torrens, those are two guys that I like both their bats, even though Eric Chavez has a majorly screwed up Francisco Alvarez with the fact that he should not be pulling the ball. And
Can we just talk about that for a second? Because the SNY broadcast, when they were talking about how Alvarez, they don't have Alvarez pulling the ball in batting practice because he wants to learn to spread the field or whatever. Why are you turning a guy that was a number one overall prospect in baseball because of his power and potentially being a Salvador Perez light? Why are you trying to turn that guy into a slap hitter? It makes legit no sense at all. And I'm sorry that we have to have the conversation every episode, but when stupidity is there, we are going to call it out. And Eric Chavez is stupid. Like, I'm not even going to sugarcoat it anymore. There's no dancing around it here. He is straight up a moron, and he's stuck in his old ways. And I don't care about the record. You could take that and shove it up your ass because Eric Chavez, just this offensive production is not sustainable. And he just thinks that he's right with all this shit. And I know people are going to be like, oh, you're not a professional hitter. It is just logical to think, isn't it, that you, as a hitting coach, I'm not a hitting coach, I'll admit it, but I would think you would want to maximize whatever a player's strength is to get it to their max abilities. Alvarez is his power. Wouldn't you want that to go to the next level? I don't get it.
Yeah, I mean, look. In my opinion, I don't think there's anything wrong with wanting to become a better hitter and learning how to branch out in terms of different hitting skills. But when you're number one overall strength, and the reason why the Mets drafted Francisco Alvarez, and one of the main reasons why he was hyped up throughout the system for so long and for the last couple of years was because of his power, was because he could hit the ball far and pull it. And it makes no sense because you're essentially wasting potential. It's like all the time, like we talk about with the Rangers, how the Rangers waste potential because they don't know how to grow it properly and how to and how to foster it. Well, the Mets are doing the same thing with Francisco Alvarez. And look, to be fair with Francisco Alvarez, he's actually had a couple nice base hits to the opposite field. So it's not like I'm going to kill him on that. But again, you're wasting his talent and his true potential because what he should be doing is pulling the ball and hitting home runs and being a main power staple in the bottom of the order, just as many of the other top teams in the MLB as many other top teams in the MLB do. So it makes no sense.
Yeah, because like when you look at just the comparison of certain catchers around the league on the better teams, I mean, even Austin Wells with the Yankees, I mean, that guy there maximizing to as much as they could with this power. And with this instead, it's like, no, we don't want you to utilize your strength. Like, it's one thing if he was trying to mix in spreading the field a bit, not strictly be a pull hitter. Like, I can get behind that. But when they said he doesn't even try to pull the ball anymore in batting practice, I'm like, what are we doing?
I think on the broadcast they said he took 35 pitches in batting practice and pulled only 2 of them. Like, it's dumb. And again, it's wasting potential of a guy that, and listen, the thing with Alvarez, right? It's like it makes no sense to make him slap hitters because one, it's not like he's the quickest guy ever. And usually catchers in the first place aren't fast either, unless your name is JT Realmuto, because he's just abnormally fast for a catcher. But again, like and don't get me wrong, I don't think Alvy's slow. He's not Vientos level slow because he actually does hustle and he actually does try to beat out the bag every single time. But again, there's no why are you going away from the strength of the player? It's poor development. And another reason why we talked about it, why Eric Chavez ultimately needs to go for this team to take the next step.
Yeah, and again, like it would just be nice if he could at least DH because the comment in the chat says I don't
Stanley.
That was Stanley, yeah. That Torrens is the best backup catcher. I mean, him throwing out runners, it's like you need him in the lineup right now just as much as you need him behind the plate. But instead, it's just like they're jumping through hoops for McNeil. They're jumping through hoops for Brett Beatty even at points. Like Brett Beatty hit 6 yesterday, and I'm sorry, I know they won the game, but you can't tell me you have World Series aspirations and have Brett Beatty hitting 6th in your lineup during any point of the season. Like, I'm sorry, that can't be a thing. That can't happen at all unless you are decimated to the core with injuries, but they're not decimated that much. I mean, Jesse Winker's the guy that's out. So what? Brett Beatty would maybe hit 7th instead. It's just stupid. And then the main thing that needs to end is Starling Marte hitting cleanup. I mean, jump in and talk about it because I've ranted enough about Marte. I did it all off season.
I mean, I'll get to Marte, but just the overall of forcing guys into positions that they shouldn't. I mean, first of all, with McNeil, like the whole gimmick of him being a versatile player, it needs to be done with. It's gone. Jeff McNeil is not a good versatile player. And correct me if I'm wrong, but his main position is second base, right? Take a look at the first game of that series. How many balls did Jeff McNeil bobble in the infield? And there were simple ground balls hit to him, like literally right at him. It wasn't like he had to move to the side and scoop a ball here and then scoop a ball. No, they were literally right there. And again, you go back to the first game of the Washington series. C.J. Abrams, or maybe it was James Woods. Yeah, James Wood hits the ball on the ground. All Jeff McNeil does has to keep the ball in the infield. He can't do that. And then you watch him in left field. He's not a great left fielder. I mean, he was sprinting awkwardly yesterday into a ball into the gap. And actually, credit to because I mean we'll get to it in the third game, but the Mets made a really nice relay play in that third game where the ball was hit deep into the left field gap, and Tyrone Taylor cuts it off, throws it to Lindor, and then Lindor makes the nice throw to it to Torrens at the plate and guns out to save a run. If Jeff McNeil was there, that throw to Lindor is probably offline, and that run scores. And then you never know because at that point the Diamondbacks take an early 1-0 lead, and that potentially changes the whole dynamic of the ball game. So McNeil, it's just and again, this is not 2019 anymore. This is not 2022 anymore. Jeff McNeil is not a good contact hitter anymore. And for a contact hitter, his plate approach is totally garbage because all he does is go up. It's simple to attack Jeff McNeil because he's going to go up there and swing first pitch.
Yep.
And all you have to do is throw something a little bit high. He'll swing first pitch and he'll pop it up or make soft contact on the ground. And that's basically the book on how to pitch Jeff McNeil. And like I said, you have Luis Angel Acuna. And listen, I get it. Acuna's not going to play every single game because he obviously needs his rest days. But there is no reason at this current moment why Luis Angel Acuna is not the starting everyday second baseman. Again, in terms of overall baseline numbers, Acuna's putting up the better numbers. In terms of defense, Acuna's the better defensive player. In terms of overall speed and versatility on the base pass, Acuna the better player. And again, makes $15 million less than Jeff McNeil.
Even in the brief moment we saw Acuna play third base, he looked better than any Jeff McNeil inning at third base.
It doesn't make any. And again, and listen, I get McNeil hit the triple yesterday. Ooh, he did something good for once. No. Acuna, and again, his ABs are better. And then, obviously the one with Beatty, obviously, Beatty's just not good. And the only reason why he's up here is because Jesse Winker's injured. If it wasn't for that, then he would be down here. And I don't anticipate him being up here much longer anyway, because still his ABs don't look any type of competitive. He's still hitting the ball into the ground at a constant rate. The only reason why he got on base was because Jose Tawa completely misplayed that ball yesterday, and he got on with an error. But other than that, Brett Beatty offers no value to this team. And once the Mets actually make upgrades with this team, through trades or possibly bringing up somebody. He's going to be. I mean, obviously, we're seeing Rodney Mauricio now. He's actually moved up to Double A, so he's playing for the Rumble Ponies. So good to
Was it
see
double A
that.
or triple A?
Double A.
Okay.
He got called up. Yeah. So good to see that he's making progress, and hopefully he can be up here soon. And then Starling Marte, or as we call him, Unk, because he is old and he's washed and he is not good anymore. And the whole Marte hitting cleanup thing, it needs to die. It does, because every single time the Mets start a rally, when Lindor, Pete, and Soto get on base, the rally's just going to die there once Starling Marte is going to get up there. Because again, like Jeff McNeil, it's easy to pitch to Starling Marte, throw him anything away, throw him anything high. He's either just going to swing or miss or make light contact. And again, that whole rally in the second game was killed because of him, because the Mets have bases loaded. Pete Alonso with a great at-bat against Zach Gallen forces in the walk, and you have Starling Marte walking up to the plate with a chance to break the game open. And again, this is something that we talked about with the Mets, where they'll have good starting pitchers on the ropes and they just can't put them away. And you have Starling Marte coming up there as a $20 million DH, designated hitter. His job is to hit the ball. And he goes up there. Now look, him taking the first pitch, I didn't have a problem with, just because Gallen had just walked in Pete Alonso and his overall control wasn't great that inning. So cool. You want to take the first pitch? By all means, do that. But the fact that he took and stood there taking the second and third pitch for strikes, and it was a 1-2-3 strikeout, that's embarrassing. You're basically Skinny Vogelback at that point.
This is why the entire offseason, every time I'd listen, whether it's listening to shows, and this is not to take a shot at people that do shows, people, again, they're entitled to their opinion. I'm not here to judge anyone's work, because I wouldn't want them to tell me how to run my show. But this is why when I would see on Twitter or hear online about how this platoon DH is going to be great, how many years have we said that for? I mean, we said it with, I feel like every episode I'm bringing this up though, but we heard it with Dom and JD. We heard it with Vogelback Ruff. We heard it with Naquin and Vogelback. We heard it with Tommy Pham and Vogelback. Last year was probably the most successful year they had, and it still was not even that great. I'm just so tired of the Mets making a joke out of the DH position. That's what it comes down to. And if they're not willing, and I stand by what I said, I don't care that they won last game. I stand by what I said in that second post-game show. They're not winning a World Series with at least two of the three between McNeil, Marte, Winker on the roster. Mostly McNeil and Marte that need to go more than anything, mostly because of the money. But on top of that too, all three of those guys are unathletic. I mean, Jesse Winker plays the field for the first time, gets hurt. Starling Marte, he plays the field, and we have to treat him like it's a spring training game and pull him after a few innings. It's just what are we doing here with this garbage bench right now? And none of these guys are athletic, so you can't even get them in the field, except Jeff McNeil you could, but he's not good at it. So it's again, if two of those guys at the least are on this roster come August, I'm sorry, I'm not looking at this team as a World Series threat, because Soto could be as great as he's been this past week. Pete Alonso could continue what he's done all season. Francisco Lindor could continue what he's done all season. I don't really care, though, when the bottom of the lineup is a complete and utter joke. And obviously guys like Nimmo and Vientos need to produce, but the thing is that I have more confidence that those two will right the ship. That's the difference. Starling Marte showed me nothing to tell me he's going to right the ship. Jeff McNeil, I've been done with the guy for years now. And then Jesse Winker, I think, and it's understandable, we all got blinded by what happened in October, because he did have a good October, and we all love Jesse Winker because of just who he is, the character, and how he loves being a New York Met and everything. But realistically, it's just I'm not seeing the same Winker that we saw in October last year, the one that was working the counts, the one that was hitting hard contact nonstop. Now it's just I feel like he's either grounding out or he's swinging or striking out in these ugly, quick at-bats. It's just not good enough.
I mean, with McNeil and Marte, it's $35 million of just you're essentially burning $35 million. And again, this is not David Stern's fault, because again, those are not two guys that he decided to sign. Again, that was Billy Epler because yes, let's give a 33-year-old Starling Marte a 4-year deal when you know the back. And listen, he was great in the first year. Like I'm not gonna sit here and like disregard Marte's first year because he was essential and why the Mets ultimately won 101 games. And him going out injured in those last couple weeks because he broke his finger due to Mitch Keller was probably one of the reasons why they ended up losing the division. But even then, after that first year, second year was completely injured. Third year, again, injury riddled, but I'll give him credit. He did have a good postseason, and his last couple games in the regular season were fine as well. But again, start of this year was just awful, awful. And again, it's $35 million you're wasting when that could go towards a better bat or a better starting pitcher or better bullpen. It just again, and listen, ultimately you can't fault Stearns with that because he tried to move Starling Marte during the offseason. There was a trade in place for the Kansas City Royals where they were going to get Hunter Harvey, another pitcher, but I guess they just couldn't make the money work. And obviously, we brought up the points where because the Mets missed out on guys like Teoscar Hernandez and Jock Peterson, that maybe that was also one of the reasons why the Marte deal also fell through. But it's just, and look, ultimately, I think if the Mets can make an addition at DH like a Jorge Soler, and by the way, he had I think a 3 RBI double last night to give the Angels the lead. I mean, he actually walked off the game, so he gave them the win there. So that's obviously a guy that we're definitely interested in. But I think if Stearns comes up to Cohen and says, "Listen, we have a move in place, but it requires DFAing Starling Marte," I think Cohen will be completely fine with that because again, he wants to win. With McNeil, I don't know if he'll be able to move him. To be honest, I think next offseason he will be able to move him just because at that point he'll have one more year with a club option. So even if you split the money, I think that would be a little bit more easier. With Winker, I mean, listen, he's definitely not the same Winker that we saw last year in terms of the postseason. I do think though that the numbers are kind of discrediting him this year. I mean, listen, the fact that he can't play the field listen, the fact that you make one throw in the outfield and you get hurt and you strain your oblique. I mean, that's not great. But I will give him credit though. I do think his ABs have been better than his overall baseline stats have been. I mean, they've been better than Starling Marte, but again, that's such a low bar where we can't even say that. But I mean, I have liked some of his at bats so far this year. I mean, he obviously had the big hit against the Blue Jays in the second series, which gave him the win. Hit a couple home runs here and there. Obviously, has made some hard contact. So I think Winker's fine, but again, when you're a guy that simply can't even play an outfield spot, it's your spot is kind of redundant. But again, if like because he's only being paid $7.5 million, so again, even if the Mets wanted to move him, they probably could. But I think Stearns like him, so I think overall he'll stay for the year.
Yeah, it's just like, why were these guys not conditioned well enough to play the field? Like, that's really what it comes down to, mostly with that as well. Like, that falls on coaching for not having these guys conditioned. And even in spring training, I feel like I don't even know if we saw guys like Winker and Marte play the field. I think Marte once or twice,
Marte
but
once or twice.
I don't
Yeah.
think we saw Winker play the field. So why all of a sudden is he a go for the outfield? And especially when you have Mr. Versatility in Jeff McNeil who could play. So why can't Jeff McNeil just go into the outfield? And since you value him so much with the bat too, wouldn't that make up for everything? But
Shit. They have fucking Jose Alzagar up here, and to be credit to Alzagar, it's a small sample size, but for the games he's played, he's actually looked pretty good. He's had a solid glove, and a lot of his at bats, he's either drawn good walks or he's made good contact for RBI. So Alzagar, I think if the Mets need a spot start here in the outfield, I think Alzagar's a guy that you could probably rely on, not long term, but like short term starts.
But this is the thing that I'm talking about too. Like, if you can't rely on him for short-term starts, why is he on the roster? Like, I agree with you that they should rely on him, but why is he on the roster when he doesn't? It just makes no sense at all when you could carry a third catcher right now and you could have at the moment one of Torrens or Alvarez DHing. And Brian, this comment's great that I forgot I pulled up and didn't mention that Marte literally has one job, can't do it. And then even the next comment, at least Winker is a power threat.
Yeah.
Marte swings a noodle. It's just like, I'm so tired of it with Marte. And it's just like he'll get a 61 mile per hour blue pit and, fart sounds, but he resets the clock. It's just, I can't deal with it. I really can't. He has to go. Like he absolutely has to go come the trade deadline if this team wants any chance at winning a World Series. But yeah, I mean, do you have anything else to add with the offense before we dive into the outings that happened from these pitchers?
I mean, it was obviously Lindor had a very nice series in my opinion. Pete, obviously had the strong first game. Second game obviously didn't do much apart from the walk, and like I said, he went 0 for 5 last game. But to be honest, I think the 0 for 5 kind of discredits him just because he did make two really good contacts on those hits to what's his name at third base. Suarez, yeah, and Suarez just made two really good plays there to dime a hit, and then one of the strikeouts he had. I mean, the completely screwed on him because it was a changeup like so low in the zone that just. But I mean, listen, it's baseball. At the end of the day, umpires are going to make bad calls, and it's definitely not the first time this year where we've seen umpires make bad calls. So, it's just something that we have to get used to. And hopefully, we don't have to worry about that soon with the automatic strike zone coming in, and then obviously Soto again had a very good strong series. Probably should have hit 3 home runs to be honest. I mean that long double that he had in the second, or it was either the second or the first game, but
First game.
yeah, the first game he had a very long double, which would it went out. If you looked at Baseball Savant, it would go out in most ballparks, but obviously at Chase Field, a bit of a high walls at the corner, so it stayed out. But then in that second game, I mean, in that third game, I mean, the because a lot of the at bats in that third game, up until that Juan Soto home run, they were just terrible. And I mean, even for Soto earlier in the game, had a guy on second base, and that was probably one of the worst at bats I've ever seen Juan Soto take in his professional career. And that was probably the first time this year where because I've probably been out of most people, I've gave Soto the most space, but even at that at bat, I'm like, bro, really? Like you're gonna give that type of at bat? Because it was just, I mean, he took strike 1 and then strike 2 and strike 3. I mean, he was just chasing a cutter out of the zone. So that was a terrible at bat. But then obviously, like I said, comes up to the plate, top of the 6th, hits a home run to deep center. And then, later in the game, obviously when they're already up 3-0 and, obviously takes the lefty deep to make it 4-0. And I gotta be completely honest. Like, I love when Soto pulls the ball, but his opposite field home runs, when he gets that swing and form, he has just such a beautiful swing on his opposite field home runs. It's beautiful to watch. And then obviously, later in the game comes through with the sacrifice fly to put the Mets up 7-1. So Juan Soto, I mean, listen, I know we want to see him start producing when runners are in score position, but he's getting better, and better as each series progresses on. And it was kind of strange because they even talked about it before the series because Chase Field was, I think, either the worst or the second worst ballpark that Soto has his hitting statistics in, and like
I think it's just against the Diamondbacks.
Yeah, against the Diamondbacks in general. And surprisingly, out of his 7 home runs, 4 of them have been against the Diamondbacks, and both of them have been 2-run games. So 2 home run games. So yeah, it's good to see that Soto's turning that corner and look like the Soto from last year.
With that said, let's talk about the pitching now. As Griffin Canning in the his outing, there was a lot of things to like, a lot of things that I didn't like. I didn't love the location when he was out there, and I was very confused why I mean, we've talked about we don't want him really utilizing the 4-seam that much, so I was fine with him not using it, but I want to see him use the cutter a little bit. I was very surprised that we didn't see the fastball though a lot, considering again he has been going to it, but the slider he missed a bit with, but he still put them in a position to win the game. But, we're going to talk more with Peterson about that with location and everything. But, yeah, what did you like and not like about Canning's outing?
Yeah, I thought Canning overall had a solid outing. I mean, obviously, I didn't like the location of that fastball that he put to Corbin Carroll, and obviously he let off the game with that home run. But pretty much he settled down after that, and I mean, like you said, I agree with, because if you look at the last couple starts that Canning's had, because, if you remember before the start of the season, we talked about how, if you want to utilize Canning the best way and want to get the best results out of him, really cut back on that fastball usage and go more of your breaking stuff with the slider, the changeup, knuckle curve, and cutter. But, surprisingly, his last couple starts, he has gone very heavy reliant on the fastball, and to his credit, it has worked. But this was one of those starts where you really saw the fastball usage get cut back a lot. And to be credited, I mean, after that bad placement of that fastball to Corbin Carroll where he hit the home run, he was pretty much dotting up his fastball in the limited time he was using it, and was getting a couple swings and misses on that, and ultimately got a couple strikeouts. So overall, and then like you said, the slider wasn't his best slider, but still put him in a position to win the game. So decent. Again, changeup was good as well. But yeah, and then overall, like obviously, I would have loved him to go out there and give you the 6 full innings, but gives you 5 strong innings, 6 hits, 1 runs, only 1 walk, which I like, 6 strikeouts, and obviously gave up the home run to Corbin Carroll. His ERA goes down 2.50. So again, another quality start out of Griffin Canning.
And then the first guy out of the pen we would see is Huascar Brazaban, who looked really good once again. But then we saw Dednell Nunez, who returned. And this hurt, to say the least. It definitely hurt. He could not locate a slider. He could not locate, and it was the last at bat where it was a 2-2 count. I'm like, throw your fastball. And then there he goes missing with a slider, and it's just not good to see. It's something that I'm not worried about because it's his first outing, but at the same time, there's part of me that is worried because of the fact that this was a problem for him in AAA as he was rehabbing. So I'm a little worried, but it's just frustrating because this is a guy that never walked batters last year. And like I said in the post game, walked 8 batters total last season in, I think it was, I forgot how many games. It might have been like 20, 30, maybe even 40, whatever amount, walked 8 batters. Already has walked now 3 in 1 outing.
Yeah, Nunez was, and like you said, we were very excited to see him come out of the pen, and it's just probably the worst bullpen outing you could probably imagine for him. Especially coming back off the injury and making his first, bullpen outing since, what was it, the San Diego series last year, or maybe it was the Diamondback series. It was his last outing, but yeah, I mean, like you said, no control of the slider at all, and it wasn't even like when we say no control of the slider, it wasn't like he was just missing the corners and he couldn't get it. Like, no, he was missing bad with the slider. Like, he was throwing it at a guy's feet, throwing it completely in the dirt. And at that point, it's like, bro, like, just throw your fastball. And I know his fastball command wasn't great either, but it was still a lot better than a slider control. So, I mean, like you said, overall with control issues, that obviously he had a problem with that in AAA this year while doing his rehab starts. Look, it was a bad outing. I'm not completely concerned yet. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. Probably a little nervous since this is his first time pitching in a major league game in freaking 6-7 months. So listen, it was a bad outing. It happened, but next outing when he comes in, and we'll probably see him in this Cup series. And especially with this Cubs lineup, as we'll preview later, you got to be very careful with them because they can score and they can hit for power. So Nunez has to be very careful now. And I'm telling you, if he has another outing like this again, then I'll start to get a little worried because you cannot go in there and walk 3 straight guys on 3 uncompetitive at bats.
And now I have to wrap before we get through the next few starts. So Reed Garrett comes into this outing, right? So now all of a sudden, Reed Garrett's available on back-to-back days. When we couldn't see him after throwing for 2 days or whatever it was, after throwing 12 pitches against the Phillies, right?
Mm-hmm.
There were points where the Diamondback series, they didn't want to bring him in because they were down by 1 run and they wanted to save him for the next day. But they use Reed Garrett there on back-to-back days and he doesn't look good. But why is it? So Reed Garrett could go back-to-back days now. So why is it that Reed Garrett wasn't available for the 3rd game? And again, it went the Mets' way. So I'm not going to sit here and complain too much. But for me personally, when Max Kranick had the type of inning he did, there was no justification to send him out there for a second. And he just did not look sharp. Like, the fastball was touching the high 90s, which was nice to see. But he didn't look sharp. He was allowing contact. He wasn't commanding his pitch as well. And then the first guy up was Brazaban, and I'm just like, why? And it worked out again, but it just, I did not understand the decision. I'm like, why, when you have an off day, would you not put Edwin Diaz in against the top of the lineup? Because at that point, you have to remember they were up 4-1, I believe, or 4-0, whatever it might have been. 4-0, because then Corbin Carroll hit the
Yeah.
home run. So at that point, I'm like, why not put Edwin Diaz in to start the eighth inning? And then even worse, the thing that's annoying me that Mendoza has done this season, he never has anyone warmed up on the
Yeah,
ready and on
it's
time. It's just like last second, it's scramble to get these guys warmed up. And honestly, there's a correlation to that with all the injuries. I got to be honest, like there's got to be some sort of correlation there because every single time he has to wait until the very last minute to get these guys up in the bullpen. And then all of a sudden, like after one batter, these guys come in instead of having them ready in advance or between innings or whenever.
Yeah, I mean, so obviously with that third game, right, with the whole bullpen usage, obviously I didn't mind using Kranick in the seventh inning, and he got the first two outs relatively easily with getting Suarez to line out to Soto, and then Gurriel flew out to Soto again. But then obviously gives up the back-to-back singles to Alec Thomas and Tawa, and then obviously gets Ketel Marte to ground out after he came into pinch hit. And again, usually I'm a proponent where I don't mind using Matt Kranick for multiple innings because I think he can do it, even though he has been the greatest in his last couple performances doing that. And I know people point to the Phillies outing, but to be fair, when you did look at at that Phillies outing, he was fine in his first two innings. The problem is when the Mets tried to push him for the third inning, and I don't think Kranick could be used as a 3 inning guy. I think at most he's a 2 inning guy. But in this situation, just because he was a little bit shaky, and the fact that he gave up back-to-back singles with Alec Thomas and Tawa. And then also, not to mention the fact, like you brought up, that the Diamondbacks' top of the order was then coming up. Then that made no sense just because Kranick was a little bit shaky and the top of the order was up. At that point, like you said, Diaz should be in. And again, I don't know why Mendoza is not prone to using Diaz in those spots
Because we have
against
to
the top.
use him only
I
in
I
safe
know.
situations,
I know.
right?
At least that was the one thing with Buck that I actually did like.
Yeah.
That Buck did was whenever the top of the order was coming up or the best part of the order was coming up, Diaz was always in and available to play those guys. But then obviously, Kranick struggles a little bit in that eighth inning, gives up the homer to Carroll, gets Perdomo with the ground out, and gets Pavin Smith a strikeout. I actually didn't mind using Braziban there, to be honest, just because out of the three guys, I mean, listen, out of the three guys, I would have preferred Garrett, but I mean, currently as of right now, and I know Stanek had a pretty easy time maneuvering around in that ninth inning, but to be fair, as of currently right now and before that ninth inning, to me, Braziban was at least ahead of Stanek in the circle of trust, and we've seen how well Braziban's gotten out of jam. So for me, I didn't mind using Braziban in that situation. And look, obviously, it worked out. He got through it, and then obviously, the Mets tack on a couple runs in the ninth inning, and like I said, Stanek comes in, and gets Gurriel to ground out. Thomas pops out, and Moreno grounds out for an easy 1-2-3 inning. So yeah, it was. So again, I don't love Mendy's bullpen usage, and again, that's something we've talked about on this podcast plenty of times. It's definitely worked in some cases, and has it worked in some cases, like the home series against the Diamondbacks. It's just I don't know with Mendy. I think he needs someone by his side to help him with bullpen management, because I think eventually it's going to come to a point where you're facing a better team like the Dodgers, and it's going to bite you in the ass.
Which we saw at points last year, but just let's briefly touch on Peterson's outing and Senga's outing before we wrap things up here and talk about the series coming up. But David Peterson, not good. You said it, I said it, that with how bad he was getting hit around the first time against the Diamondbacks, it was bound to happen. And I'm sorry, but just the location of his pitches the entire outing drove me insane. And like I mentioned mentioned in my post game, I love Gary, I love Keith, but I love how they act like it's such a strange mystery why Peterson struggles in the later innings. It's almost like he's leaving everything over the zone, and hitters are just figuring out what he's throwing.
maybe that's it. I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy.
Not even the later innings, but against the better teams with the better lineups. Because
Yeah.
because okay, we've seen him like he's had a couple good starts against the Miami Marlins, right? And obviously his strikeout numbers were up in those games. But to be to be fair, like it's the Marlins. Like what good hitters are in that lineup? They don't have a lot. Maybe apart from one or two that I can't think about on top of my head. But as you see with the better teams, Peterson's strikeout numbers go down a lot, and we've seen it with the last three starts in the because I said it even before that when we did our series predictions. I said I think the Mets will take two out of one. I was right about that, and I predicted right which games they would win and lose. And ultimately, I looked at that last start that Pearson had against the Diamondbacks, how hard he was hit, and basically just how much the defense bailed him out. I'm like, yeah, that's the game I worried about the most. That I think the Mets will end up losing, and they did. And again, even when you look at past starts for Peterson, the one against the Phillies where they won that game and they swept them, but again left a lot of balls over the plate and was getting hit hard. I get that he kind of maneuvered against the top of the order, but still Trey Turner obviously he hit the ball hard to top the game at 2. And again, the bottom of the order was giving Peterson of the Phillies bottom of the order was giving Peterson plenty of trouble. And again, his strikeouts were down in that game. He only had 2 strikeouts. When you look at the Diamondbacks game at Citi Field, only had 2 strikeouts. And okay, this game he had 6 strikeouts, but again, look how many balls over the plate he was leaving, and look how much hard contact was made against David Peterson. So, and it just figures, right? David Peterson has the worst outing probably out of any pitchers, and he still manages to find a way to get through 6 innings. If this was any other pitcher, they probably would have been knocked out like in the 4th or 3rd inning. So I don't know how he does it, but
the defense,
yeah, the defense and the fact that like I'm sorry, but when this rotation gets back healthy, and obviously when Minaya gets back, when Montas gets back, maybe even the Mets add another pitcher at the trade deadline, or they call up one of their young guns. Like David Peterson is not going to be in the postseason rotation. And again, this was another reason why Peterson was left out of the postseason rotation last year in favor of a guy like Jose Quintana. And again, Quintana, not a great, a velocity pitcher, but at least he puts the ball in better spots than David Peterson. And ultimately, you saw he came up big in those starts against the Brewers in Game 3. And then against the Phillies, also in Game 4 of the NLDS, obviously got knocked around by the Dodgers in Game 4, I believe. Yeah, Game 4. But ultimately, again, we're not going to see Peterson when this rotation is fully healthy come playoff time, which the Mets should make the playoffs, and hopefully they do. But you're not going to see Peterson in those big spots just because, again, you can't rely on David Peterson.
No, and I talked about it with Canning, and it kind of applies for Peterson too, where once these guys could go to the bullpen, it's going to make life so much easier for a guy like Max Kranick when he only has to go 1 inning, and you could actually use him in those high leverage spots. So that's something I'm excited about. And then in terms of Kodai Senga's start, had trouble with the command early, just had no feel for the fastball. But overall, I mean, it ended up working out, and he was able to settle down and give a really good outing, to be honest with you. And if he didn't have those command issues throughout the start, you're probably looking at a guy going 7-8 innings with how good he was at points in this outing. It's just unfortunate that early on he had his struggles in that regard.
Yeah, Senga definitely. In total, when you look at his outing, it was a decent outing. But obviously, when you break them up, between the first 3 innings and 4 innings 4 to 6, it was 2 totally different Kodai Sengas. Because I mean, through those first 3 innings, I mean, just command issues. Like you said, couldn't command his fastball, couldn't command his cutter, and obviously he walks 2 in the first inning, gets out of that, walks Eugenio Suarez to start off that inning, like I brought up before with the good defensive play that the Mets made. Alek Thomas hits a double, but a great rally by the Mets with Tyrone Taylor fielding the ball in the left center gap. Obviously throwing the ball to Lindor, and then Lindor tags out Suarez at the home plate to hold the Diamondbacks to 0 runs at that point, and then again because this is the point in the game where the Diamondbacks really screwed themselves. And I brought it up on the post game yesterday, where the Marte striking out looking with bases loaded was very similar in terms of swinging the momentum back to the other team with the Diamondbacks here, because you get to the bottom of the 3rd, right? And again, Senga's still struggling with his command, and he walks Jose Herrera, the nine hitter, and walks Corbin Carroll, the leadoff man. And now you have 2, 3, and 4 coming up. very good hitters for the Diamondbacks, and Perdomo, Pavin Smith, and Suarez. And like I said, Herrera, Corbin Carroll on base, no outs, and Senga struggling with his command. If you're Perdomo, and I don't know if this was him making the play or if it was Torey Lovullo from the bench signaling a bunt, it made no sense to bunt in that situation. It's just it worked out for the Mets because obviously the bunt was poor. They were able to make the out at third, and then Pavin Smith comes up and then grounds into an inning double play. And pretty much after that, and you saw Senga, he made a couple of tweaks here and there to his repertoire where he started using more of his secondary stuff. And then once he got a feel of the secondary stuff, he was able to start factoring in the fastball and the cutter more and was able to locate it a bit better. And then obviously you saw it at the end of the game where, he was starting to dot up guys. The swing and miss stuff was up there. So, yeah, overall, like I said, when you break up the start through the first 3 innings and then 4 through 6, 2 totally different starts. But overall, I liked what I saw from Senga. And overall, then when you look at his line, 6 innings like that. Obviously, like you said, if his command was a little bit better, he probably would have given you 7 innings, 2 hits, 0 runs, 5 walks, which again, don't like that. 4 strikeouts. Would like to see the swing and miss stuff be better, but 1.16 ERA. And listen, I get there's a lot of talk right now, and listen, there's plenty of good pitchers in the National League right now with Yamamoto, Paul Skeens, guys like that. But hey, listen, if Senga keeps pitching like this, there's no reason why he can't put himself in the Cy Young conversation. And I get it's still early, but hey, listen, he's got to go out there and keep doing what he's doing.
Yeah, why not? He's been ranked towards the top. Do you have anything else you want to add with this series before we talk about the Cubs one and wrap this up?
No, we could preview the Cubs series.
All right, so just to briefly preview that, it will be Clay Holmes versus Jameson Taillon in the first matchup. The almost met Jameson Taillon. In Game 2, the Cubs have not announced a pitcher, but Tyler McGill is going to go. So no matter what, we got a little bit of an ace-off there in Game 2. And then Griffin Canning versus Matt Boyd in Game number 3. I am going to say that the Mets – I'm going to go back to the 1-2 prediction. I'm sorry to let people down, the optimist down. But I'm going 1-2. I'm going to say that they win the second game of the series. This Cubs team's really good. They are one of the best offensive teams in baseball, and the Mets have to be wary of that, and they have to be able to go toe-to-toe against it, which is something that they have not exactly proved that they are probably going to be able to do that.
Yeah, obviously, when you look at the Cubs overall, pitching is definitely not their strength as of right now because, Imanaga's been out a little bit with an injury. Obviously, Justice Steele's out for the whole year. I think he's getting Tommy John surgery. So, 2 big misses for the Cubs there. But overall, when you look at the Cubs, and a big reason why they currently have a winning record and are first in the NL Central is because they hit the fuck out of the baseball. They have one of the best offenses in baseball right now. And, when you look at some of those guys in that lineup, Ian Happ again, he's had a good start to the season, 755 OPS. Kyle Tucker, who's looking for that big-time contract this year in the offseason, 943 OPS with a 284 average. Pete Crow Armstrong, which that trade hurts. That trade
he's
hurts.
going to torch the Mets.
Because the Mets got away with the Jared Kelenic trade because obviously Kelenic's become kind of a bust, and he got sent down by the Braves a couple weeks ago. But, yeah, lightning couldn't strike twice because Pete Crow Armstrong – they obviously traded him in the Javi Baez trade, and obviously Baez left. He's kind of having a better resurgent season so far, but yeah, that trade has not worked out for the Mets at all because Pete Crow Armstrong has taken the next step, and he's become a prolific power hitter in that Cubs lineup, and again, probably one of the better defensive center fielders in baseball too. Also, a guy with a hell of an arm as well, and then also Seiya Suzuki is both an 832 OPS. Michael Busch, 823 OPS. He's hitting the ball well, so. Listen, for the Mets this series, if they want to win, and I brought this up before, but if the pitching for the Mets is anywhere near average and the bats are not hitting like we saw in this series, I fear for the Mets in this series because the offense it has to go toe to toe with the Diamondbacks because they got to go toe to toe with the Cubs because like I said, the Cubs are going to hit. Obviously the pitchers are going to do their best to try to keep them stagnant, but. Obviously, we'll see. My brain is telling me Cubs are going to win the series 2-1. But listen, I picked the Mets to win this series against the Diamondbacks. So I guess hopefully lightning can strike twice. Hopefully the Mets can take 2-1.
Hopefully,
Oh, 2 out of 3.
hopefully not only strike it, hopefully we ride it. But
Wow.
yeah.
Wow.
Jonathan, I hope you're right. I hope that you could come back and shove it in our face that they end up winning the series. I want nothing more than for that. But I'm just sitting here telling you how I think it's gonna go. Like again, I sat here all season predicting them to win series time and time again. I'm just gonna be honest at the end of the day. So yeah.
Cubs just lost 3. Yeah, but the Giants are playing well right now, and again, they have a good offense. So, I mean, listen, again, if the Mets can score runs, which they've shown in spurts that they can do, they can compete with any baseball team. It's
We
just
have to see it
the
happen.
inconsistency of the offense. And listen, I think the pitching can hold up because the pitching has been very good so far. And there's 3. I mean, Clay Holmes, I obviously trust. Canning's been good. McGill is the wild card for right now, just because it is May, and we know how May McGill usually is. But hopefully, he can bounce back in this start. But like I said, the offense has to step up in the series. If they want to win the series, that's because I'm telling you right now, they're not going to win games 2-1 in this series. It's not going to happen. They're going to have to score 5 to 6, even maybe 7 runs in a game to win the series.
Yeah, 100%. I think we'll wrap it up there. So thank you everyone for tuning in and watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new to the channel. Turn on your notifications so you know when we upload or go live. And we'll see you guys in the next one.